through your weight loss journey. Thank you, Ruth, for recording. Um, my name is Dr. Samantha Wellapilly. I am a GP and a yoga therapist. I'm also a meditation teacher and a coach, and I love all things holistic. And we approach weight loss in a very holistic way at Boots Online Doctor, and we have the privilege of talking to you every Monday lunchtime all about different aspects of a holistic journey. And we are really honored to do so. So that was me, and this is Ruth. She's going to say hello too.
Hi everyone, I'm Ruth Taylor. I'm a nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor. Really happy to be here as well with you, Sam. We love being here on a Monday afternoon. It gives you hopefully the opportunity to learn something that you haven't thought about or to start thinking about things hopefully a little bit differently, but also an opportunity to bring along your questions. So please do pop any questions you've brought straight into the Q&A box if you can see that. And if for any reason that's tricky, pop them in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer them when we get to the Q&A section. Do say hello, do let us know where you're based. We really love to hear from you and to hear what's going on with you. And yeah, we have created a whole load of wonderful information to support you on your weight loss journeys. But really, the icing on the cake are these webinars. So do feel free to come along as many Mondays as you possibly can. We are going to be here all across the Christmas period and into the new year. So if you feel like having a break or just getting some support, just jump in. And bringing us nicely too. Let's see how you've been over the last week or so. How's it been going for you? Has anything happened that's working well? There's no right or wrong answers. It just helps us to understand what's going on with you, what's been going on this week for everyone. And we've also launched our first poll. So thank you to Julia. Julia's here supporting us with all IT queries and support. So thanks, Julia, for being here with us.
Yes, great. Do say hello in the chat box. And if you can set your settings to talk to everyone, that's great. So everyone can see your comments. Let us know where you are in the country, what you're up to, how your Christmas preparations are going, whatever you like. And it's there for you to chat and to preferably, if you could ask us questions in the Q&A box, that really helps us to find the questions at the end of the session. We're going to just present a few slides, we'll whiz through those, and we'll get to your questions. If you've already come with questions, feel free to pop them in there now. But we will move on to the meat and the meat of our presentation.
And also, just to let you know, somebody's asking about seeing other participants. Because it's a webinar, you can't see the other participants. We know who's here. And also, in terms of the poll, it's completely anonymized. So it's really just for us to get a flavour of who's here, what's going on for you, what sort of stage of your weight loss journey you're at. And I can see today we've only got a couple of people who are in maintenance phase. So very warm welcome to you and thank you for joining us. And actually splitting quite evenly across the sort of maybe a little bit more of people, a few more people who are midway through your weight loss journeys, and quite a fair number of you who are just starting out. So do feel free to ask and let us know what's going on for you if you have any questions or if anything comes up in today's webinar, then just let us know and we will do our best to support you.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I can see we have folk in Scotland, in London, in Yorkshire. Um, in Manchester. Welcome, welcome everyone, wherever you might be. Um, I'm in Brighton. It is fairly grey. Ruth, how is it where you are?
Yeah, it's equally, yeah, just along the coast in Hampshire, and it's grey, not raining, so that's a bonus. We've also launched our second poll. Thank you, Julia. And we just wanted to hear from you to know that we're being as relevant as possible for you. And if anything, again, this is completely anonymous, so do feel free to just be as honest as you feel comfortable to be. We've no idea who is answering what. We'll just get a flavour from the room today of what's going on. So this is really to so we can understand what's going on in your mindsets, how you're approaching this journey, how you feel about yourself, whether you've got fears or anxiety, your mindset around this sort of whole diet, brain thinking is quite tough, isn't it? And also your consistency or things that derail you as much as possible. It's good for us to know what's going on for you because we can really hopefully give you some advice and help. So let's start. So this is absolutely key, and it's something we often talk about, isn't it, Sam? Is sort of like trying to get away from this thinking about I'm on a diet, I'm off a diet, and also the sort of historical view that we have in our society that weight loss is all around calories. Hopefully, we're all moving a little bit away from that now, although we do speak to a lot of people who are still thinking that that is the nuance of how to lose weight. And we know from working with all of you and from all of the research that we do to support the webinars and to support all of the information we share with you, is that it's so much more than calories in, calories out, that the science is a little bit flawed, that foods have different impacts on how they land in our body and how they affect us, both in terms of our energy, in terms of sustaining that energy, in terms of how they affect our blood sugar, but also two calorie foods with the same calorie amounts will have a very different effect on our ability to lose weight, or our ability to actually not lose weight, or even to gain weight. So our food, our body uses calories very differently. Our body uses calories to digest food. And so that is why that effect of food is very different for everyone and very different for the foods that we eat. So let's have a quick look at the poll. There's quite a few of you who tend to be either dieting or not. So let's think about that today. And maybe for you today, it could be a step into moving about how you approach losing weight without that diet mindset, because this is really helpful to your long-term success. People are saying, a lot of people are saying, 14 of you are saying you're either focused or you stop focusing. And about 23 of you who've answered the poll are saying that you're aiming for a balanced, sustainable way of eating. So that's really great news. The biggest challenge that has come out top is being consistent with healthy habits. The majority of you who've answered that question are saying that's the biggest issue. And for a number of you, emotional eating and stress eating are also key factors. So let's think about that. What does that mean to you? How can we overcome that? A lot of you, which is amazing to hear, are focusing on eating mostly whole foods. Well done. So that's really good. And a small number of you less so. So let's think about whether we can make any movement around that. Might not be the right time for you. That's absolutely fine. It's about learning what might be helpful for you and finding the time that would work for you to do that. So there's still a few people here are tracking calories, and maybe that works for you. There's nothing wrong with that. If you find that is, there's quite a large number of you who sometimes, but not strictly, and some of you who are doing it not really very often at all. There's a lot of people who are really self-doubting, and I guess that's the core of why we're here today, isn't it, Sam? We want to move on thinking about this whole psychology of that mindset. And a lot of people who are worried that you don't have enough willpower. So we're going to put all of those myths a little bit to bed, hopefully, today. So we talk a lot about protein. Protein has a high thermic effect on our body. That means that to digest that protein, we use 20% to 30% of the food calorie content of that protein. So it's sort of like a really great food to eat because it takes a long time to be utilized in our body. It helps us feel fuller for longer, but also from a calorie point of view, it uses more calories to digest. The same with fiber. Again, it takes more time to digest, whereas carbohydrates take a lot less effort for our bodies to digest. So we utilize less calories in the digestion of those foods and also of fats. So we want to be focusing a lot of our attention when we're thinking about food of making sure that on your plate you've got that protein and the fiber nailed 100%, because actually not only does it help you feel fuller, it actually really helps reduce the likelihood of overeating. And the research has shown that actually when we eat those foods, we're going to feel fuller. We're going to naturally stop wanting to eat as much. So really think about the consistency of what your plate looks like. We've got some brilliant resources we can share. So Julia, if you could share something like the core meal plan and the GLP-1 eating plan, that would be really good. And then if they're relevant for you and you haven't got them already, just click on the link in the chat box and you can download those. So body composition, certain health conditions such as obesity and low thyroid function can affect the amount of weight that we gain and the weight that how easy it is for us to lose weight. So you've also got to layer in an element of personalization in your weight loss journey. So we're not all the same. So when you read stories on Instagram or TikTok or wherever you hit your social media, it can be very disabling in terms of our emotional well-being, because we can see people who are sharing these emotional journeys of actual speedy success, and we can compare ourselves inadvertently to those in a negative way. So we want you to really think about you, your personal journey and about this not being a competition. So these are really important key things.
Absolutely. So this slide is all about our thoughts becoming our reality. So we, we get our inputs, our stimuli from various things in our environment, and social media is one of them, as Ruth mentioned. So worth recognizing where we are getting those inputs from, right? Are they supportive sources? Are they negative sources? Are they sources that make us feel anxious, make us feel inadequate, make us feel like we're not um, doing something right? Okay. I find it quite alarming when I see these kind of dramatic weight loss stories where people look like overnight they've gone from, being having difficulty with their weight to being very slim and possibly athletic looking, which we know is not really possible. So, we have to really take what we see in these kind of unregulated sources with a pinch of salt, okay, and really focus on our own journey, because that's where your story is, that's where your magic is, okay? And we know that our thoughts drive our decisions and our actions. And if we constantly think negatively or doubt ourselves, it's more likely that we will engage in those self-sabotaging behaviors. And who can put their hand up? I can for sure put my hand up as a self-saboteur in the past. Okay, we are human. We the key is to have awareness around this and to know where those where that tipping point is. Sometimes it is when we take in some of those negative stimuli from the external, often social media. I'm not going to completely vilify it because there can be really positive things there. Unfortunately, people put things up on there and it seems like authority. Somehow our brain processes it as an authority figure saying something because they're shouting on social media. Anyway, I won't labor the point. Conversely, a positive growth-oriented mindset can lead to positive and proactive behavior in the face of challenge. So this is really where we look at resilience and sticking to our game, staying in your lane, sticking to your game, because this is your path, right? And no one else is going to walk it for you. All right. Um, so we can think about ways which things that we believe about ourselves. So our self-identity. So our belief becomes reality, our identity shapes our behavior. So you might see yourself as someone who is quote unquote unhealthy or bad at dieting, or I always fail at this, or I've done this so many times and it works for a few months and then I fall off the wagon and then it all goes back to normal. We can have these are self-fulfilling prophecies, as we probably all know. If we tell ourselves this enough, these stories, they will repeat themselves. So we want to really look at shifting some of that self-talk, that self-identity, to things like, I'm someone that really cares about myself. I'm someone who takes care of my health. I stay in my lane. I focus on what my body needs, what my body needs to be healthy. And instead of saying this, I always fail kind of repetitive mantra, it's more like I'm learning to nourish my body in better ways, and just being really gentle with yourself as you go along. This might be new to some of you, but that self-talk really can impact our behavior. All right. So it's catching it. It's catching that negative self-talk that can really sabotage us. Okay. And turning the volume up on that more positive, you know what, I'm learning. I'm taking this step by step and I'm going at my pace.
Mhm.
And that's the only thing I can do. I cannot go at anyone else's pace. All right. So this positive thinking will encourage your consistency. And I know that in that poll we just did, a lot of us were saying consistency is the difficult thing. Okay. And weight loss and this long-term journey, keeping the weight off for the long term, requires that consistency and that positive mindset that can keep you motivated through any setbacks that might occur. Okay. Thoughts like, I'm making progress, even if it's slow, encourage that persistence rather than quitting after a little setback or a little blip, something happened. That's okay. We're back on it. We're back on it. We're not going to abandon ourselves over something small. Okay. Visualizing is also a very powerful practice. Some of you might already know this, be aware of this in sort of sports, or you might have read about this, like sports stars sort of do this like visualization exercise of winning a race or holding up a cup or a trophy or something like that. But you can do it on your journey of visualization, like perhaps visualizing fitting into your clothes more comfortably, having more energy, being um, being lighter in yourself, in your mood. Okay. Creating these visual images in your mind, if you're a visual person, can create that motivation and reinforce your healthy habits. And studies have shown that mentally rehearsing your success can improve real world performance, whether that is in fitness, nutrition, or in weight management. So there is evidence behind this too. And we want to really support you to overcome those limiting beliefs that the things we say to ourselves, like, oh, my willpower is like, at an all-time low, or I just can't stick to a new routine, create those mental barriers. Okay. They are just thoughts. Okay. They are just thoughts that are going through our minds. We can replace those. We can, with consistency, we can replace those, turn the volume down on those and up on a thought that is more empowering, like I'm in control of my choices. Um, and it will really help you to build confidence and discipline. And it is the repetition of these things, of that kind of recognizing when something negative is creeping in and replacing it, and just no, I'm in control of my choices. I'm the one in the driving seat. I'm the one leading this journey. And it's really powerful when you can do that and you can say that to yourself. And we're really looking at this, at the mental game here, that it's such a vital part of this journey, and we underestimate it because we think about food and we think about stress and we think about how much we move our bodies, but really there is a big mental component here, which is why we are focusing it on today's webinar.
Yeah, that whole brain game, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
the whole mission is to repattern our thoughts. And you mentioned self-sabotage, and this is such an important factor for many of you. And I can see a few comments in the chat box that we will pick up on, and a couple of questions we'll come back to. And a few people who are back on the journey, having had a pause and maybe a little bit of regain. Well done for getting back. You're here. That's all that matters. Okay, we're here to support you. You're here. You're there. You're turning up for yourself. Well done. So, self-sabotage is something we can all be guilty of, and it can stem from childhood patterns of behavior, it can stem from learned behavior, it can stem from the thoughts that we tell ourselves, our self-beliefs, and all of those unconscious thoughts and feelings or behaviors that undermine our ability to achieve our weight loss goals. And when we talk about self-sabotage, I think for many people, it's sort of a little bit of a wake-up call. Maybe it's the first time of realizing actually this is something you might be doing to yourself, or you may have other people in your friendship group who almost sabotage you. I know a few people who are saboteurs because they actually feel uncomfortable with other people making progress or moving forward, and they're feeling a little bit left out. And that can be really difficult, can't it? But it could be because of fear. You might be worried about what you look like when you've lost all that weight. You're so used to looking at yourself and your clothes fitting as you are now that actually you're worried about what level of attraction you're going to be permeating to the world, how you're going to look in new clothes. It may be that you're feared that people might judge you. There's a lot of judgment going on in this whole weight loss world. So there are all sorts of things that may be going in your head subconsciously. You may have very low self-esteem, and that is a very common known factor in people who are overweight. And judgment from other people can be part of that, and that can create this whole feeling of low self-esteem, this sort of like leaning into foods to give you that comfort when actually you're feeling really down on yourself. So there may be all sorts of aspects of this that are relevant to you, and some that are completely not. But also procrastination. We can all be guilty of thinking, oh, do you know what? I'll go for that walk tomorrow. It's a grey day. It might rain. I've got all of these jobs to do. And actually, it's much easier if I just crack on with my day and get everything done I need to do. And it's sort of like we can actually justify procrastination, or it could be, oh, I'll try that new vegetable. I'm not sure. So let's find a few excuses not to have it because actually I'm safer with the foods I know. There are all sorts of external triggers. You were talking about this, Sam. So things like birthday parties, unexpected invitations from friends, the things that we have to navigate and be conscious and mindful of. And actually, maybe there's an element of self-sabotage if we always join in and think, oh, well, I'll not have the cake next time, or I'll not have that extra slice of something delicious and yummy, because it's very easy to just go with the flow, do what other people expect us to do, turn up in the same way that we've always turned up. So we need to be prepared for all of those triggers. And that leads us nicely. Next week, we're going to be talking all about these type of efforts around the whole festive season. So, we will be looking at that a little bit more. But I think what's important is to start recognizing your patterns of behavior, start recognizing your thoughts, almost catch those thoughts in the process of having them, because sometimes they're just there going on in the back of our heads without even our awareness of them. So you start catching them and actually question them. I heard an expression which was called take your thought to court. And I thought that's brilliant. It's almost like you actually challenge that thought and think, is this really true? Is this really what I believe about myself? And if it is there something I can do about it? And I really like that. That really resonated with me. So really just challenging what's sat there for you. And I guess in terms of this whole saboteur as well, thinking about the restriction, a few of you said that you're either on a diet or off a diet. That whole diet mindset turns up time and time again. It's what we've learned for sort of decades, really. This whole diet mindset, the diet industry is created around people being on diets. And that means there's an off switch as well, isn't there? But actually, what we want is for you to learn to eat in a way that's consistent every day of every year for your health. You can have treat foods. You don't have to feel guilty. When you're on a restrictive mindset, it can really act as a saboteur as well. So, calorie restriction, we know the research says that people who over restrict will then go to a point where they overeat. It's a very natural impact that happens. So if you restrict, 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 and you suddenly have a food that you haven't had because you've not allowed yourself, you can get into this whole binging, restricting cycle. And this is fact. This is known in the research. So it's really important that we start recognizing that there is a need for treats within this whole journey and that there needs to be no guilt associated with that, because the minute it becomes a guilt trip, it puts a completely different spin on it. We can also get really fatigued with calorie restriction. We can get mental fatigue, we can get physical fatigue, and we can have reduced energy levels, increased stress hormones, and a real lack of satisfaction from our meals. So we want food to be a pleasure and something that nurtures and feeds you along the way on your journey. Obviously, if you're taking weight loss medications, you might find that your appetite is significantly lower, but you can still put those healthy, delicious, nurturing foods on your plate and just have them in a smaller amount. And then we also need to be thinking about that whole element of emotional eating. For many people, this is something that can be a trip for many, many people, time and time again. And that whole restrictive eating pattern really builds into the emotional eating as well. So we want to move away. If you're somebody who restricts or feels guilty, then start thinking about the thoughts and what they're doing for you, whether they're actually working for you now or whether it's time to move on and let them go. And I really like this. Think about nourishment, not punishment. I think it's a really important thing to be thinking about. And this is true for you, whether you're on a weight loss journey, whether you're at the beginning, the end, or maintaining. These elements are so important for everyone who has any relationship with food or with their body to be thinking in this way and actually broadening the horizon and moving away from this sort of over restriction as much as we possibly can. And Sam, you're going to talk about stress in a bit more detail, I think, because it's such an important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and we do a whole webinar just on stress. So this is just a single slide just to reiterate, really. We can't really talk about the psychology of weight loss without mentioning stress. And we know that stress is anything that triggers that hormonal response, that cortisol response in sustained chronic stress or adrenaline in a sort of short burst of stress. And we know that there's day-to-day stresses, and stress is part of life. We can't avoid it. We all have a certain amount of stress in our lives. Some of us more than others. There can be emotional distress, physical illness causing stress on the body, physical trauma, and blood sugar imbalance can cause stress on the body. Okay. And what we know is that high stress levels have been linked to increased consumption, increased binge eating. And women who experience chronic stress, which is a persistent sense of overwhelm, where it feels like the pressures constantly exceed coping ability, uh, these women are more likely to overeat and engage in emotional eating, which can lead to fat storage and weight gain. Okay. Afternoon and evening are particularly high risk periods for binge eating behaviors. Um, and stress management becomes even more important when our weight loss slows or stabilizes. When we even start approaching that goal weight, we have to start watching the stress because that's when it's a little bit of a danger zone. Okay, stress can manifest in many ways in our lives. Um, when I talk about everyday sort of day-to-day things, it can be just like micro stresses, like the alarm going off in the morning is a bit stressful to your system. Having a disagreement, and we talked about the more significant things like physical illness, physical trauma. Um, we talk about cortisol a fair amount because there is an association between cortisol and blood sugar. Because cortisol increases blood sugar by stimulating the liver to produce more or release more glucose for energy in the fight or flight state. So when we are under stress, we are in fight or flight. That is, our body is preparing to face some kind of perhaps a predator. Our bodies are primitive, wonderful machines, let's say, and we still have these two sort of polar um, branches of the autonomic nervous system: fight or flight, rest, digest, heal. Okay, so when we're stressed, we're in that fight or flight state. So our body is raising our blood sugar to enable quick energy release, essentially. And at the same time, insulin release is inhibited. So that's our hormone that stores our sugar. So it results in this high blood sugar level. Okay, so preparing the body for action. And in the short term, this can lead to weight gain, particularly around the middle. Okay, and over the long term, this can contribute, of course, to pre-diabetes and then on to type 2 diabetes. Okay. Um, there is strong evidence that cortisol encourages that fat storage around the abdomen and around the organs in the abdomen, um, which is particularly concerning because it's associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke. Um, stress is also it also has an impact on our lifestyle choices. When we're stressed, we often feel tired due to that overactive fight or flight system. And that leads to us not really wanting to do any physical activity. And additionally, we might not prioritize cooking those whole foods and those healthy meals and instead we opt for those processed or fast foods. So we're bringing awareness to these issues so that we can plan for those high stress times and develop strategies to manage them effectively. Because as I said before, we cannot avoid stress completely. We're not going to be living in some kind of spa situation for the rest of our lives. That's not realistic. We need to think about what do we do? What are our triggers? How do we recognize what is causing us stress? Okay, and is evening time the time where I sort of go over everything and I get a bit stressed out, and then I open that pack of chocolate biscuits and I just unconsciously eat them to comfort myself? Is that, and we're saying that without judgment. It's not about judging yourself. This is, okay, we recognize this pattern. What can I do instead? Is there something else I could do instead? If I have to console myself with food or comfort myself with food, does it have to be chocolate biscuits? Can it be something else? What else could I put in its place? Because, these are step by step, and we know that there are all of us will be in a different position in our lives and in our levels of stress. So we just want to, you're all here because you're on a weight loss journey, and we're looking at this holistically. And stress is something that we really need to look at because we're talking about weight loss here, but of course it also has an impact on our cardiovascular system, on our blood pressure, on so many other systems. If we have other chronic diseases going on, we know that stress itself and that cortisol release increases inflammation in the body, and there's a whole plethora of things that it can do. But in terms of weight loss, when we focus on that, when we focus on that and we focus on looking at our stress and looking at our resilience, it's not just our weight loss that will improve. There are so many other things that will improve in our lives. So it is just such a key thing to be aware of, and again, we're bringing in that kindness to ourselves when we know we've got a lot on, a lot of pressure, maybe a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. It's so vital to recognize where we are and take care of ourselves.
So true. Yeah, it's a really good point, and I guess really important for us to start thinking about stress and how it impacts all of us. So we wanted you just to take a moment here. And when we talk about triggering behavior, what does this mean for you? I mean, there's been a lot of sharing, which is really interesting. And thank you so much for being honest with one another. I can see these lovely conversations going on between you all in the chat box. So thank you. And we will pick up any of the key points that would be helpful, hopefully, to talk about. So somebody's saying the link for managing stress doesn't seem to be working. Okay, Julia, can you retry that? And if for any reason it isn't working, we will try and make sure it's working for future weeks. If you don't mind just resharing the link, Julia, for the stress tips, that would be really helpful. Thank you so much. Some really interesting thoughts about reducing alcohol. Thank you for that. And also, lots of people are talking about, their whole journeys and the things that they've been through, and actually, the competition that other people bring, which you didn't even, being in a competition that you didn't even want to be in. So, and a long question here, which we'll pick up. And the morning after overeating. Yeah, okay. How does that feel for you? What's going on? So let's think about this. What does this mean to you? We need to really bring consciousness to our unconscious behaviors, I think. Absolutely. We need to learn to grow into being accountable for our actions. But actually, like you were saying, Sam, it's not about judging ourselves. It's just about recognizing the behavior. So maybe if you're really struggling with that, keeping something like the food, the mood diary would be really helpful. So you can actually start tracking perhaps the things that are triggering you to go off course. Really think about your behavior and what you might need to change. And don't try and do everything at once. Just think about not judging yourself, about bringing some awareness to where you're at, the things that perhaps aren't working for you. And it's about giving yourself more choice so that you can make different choices going forward. That sounds so simple in theory. And we're all works in progress, I think. No one here, including myself and Sam, none of us are perfect. We know how difficult this is. So we all have different things, and those things can change from time to time. So, just keep your eye on the ball, be kind to yourself, observe that pattern of behavior without judgment, and just think, okay, is it time for me to do something about this now? So, Sam, you're a guru in this whole world.
Hmm.
Mindful behavior, so I'm handing over to you.
Well, thanks, Ruth. I'm not sure if I'm a guru, but here we are. Um, so we can think about mindfulness and, being mindful about our thoughts. And really it's kind of, this is kind of an echo of what we've spoken about already. When we recognize those thoughts coming up that are really unhelpful, I'm not good enough, I'm not, I'm terrible at this, I always fail. We all know the things that we can say to ourselves are really mean, and we would never say them to another soul, but we think it's okay to say it to ourselves somehow. Um, but we need to question that thought. Okay, we need to reframe it with something positive. You are learning, you're taking this step by step. You are not alone. You are on a journey of, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, we're not going to get this all overnight. We cannot. No one can. And anyone that tells you differently is frankly lying. Okay, this is something that is day to day. It's such a rewarding journey as you go through it and as you develop this different relationship with yourself, with your thoughts, with the way you talk to yourself, with the way that you learn to appreciate yourself more and more. And I realize that this, you know, we're talking about the context of weight loss, and weight loss has so many connotations, so many associations with the way we view ourselves, our self-confidence, our self-esteem, as Ruth has been saying, the way we believe in ourselves, the way we present ourselves to the world, our confidence. So when we have those thoughts, I invite you all to to really look at this mindfulness concept, to focus on evidence and achievements, to practice that self-compassion, to just be there for yourself. Creating a new thought pattern is about that, questioning the thought, take that thought to court. Is this actually true? Or is this just bogus and I've just made it up and it doesn't matter. I'm setting a new pattern. Actually, my life starts in this moment. I can step forward from where I am right here, and I don't have to repeat the mistakes or the slip ups or the lapses that I've done before. I don't have to. I always have a choice. My life is made up of my choices. So we're really like opening the field. We don't have to go down these narrow paths that we've walked before. We can start afresh, start anew every second of every day. Okay. So, um, we're going to get onto your questions really quickly, and I'm really enjoying the chat here. I've seen someone talk about 80% dark chocolate. Fantastic. I think 80% dark chocolate is brilliant. We talk about food a lot, but dark chocolate is great. It's got some really great antioxidants in it as well, and you can also. It's kind of impossible to binge on dark chocolate because of it's so rich. So it's
Yeah,
quite a wonderful alternative if you can slowly increase the percentage of your chocolate if chocolate is your thing to make that switch over.
definitely. It's worth doing because you get the health benefits as well. So let's
Yeah.
quickly look at this slide. We're thinking about mindful eating. So this is sort of like the process of noticing, observing, feeling, tasting, and it can really help you move away from that whole calories in, calories out, and shift over to thinking about what that food is doing for your body, how it's sort of supporting your energy, maybe, how it's just making you feel better in terms of your mood. Perhaps making sure you're bringing in those healthy fats can be really helpful when we're really struggling with low mood as well and inflammation going on in our body. So it's sort of looking at food from its nurturing perspective as much as anything else. So taking time to enjoy your food instead of, we know lots of people, and I'm sure we can be guilty of this ourselves and our families too, of just almost getting through this meal because it's something you've got to do and not really engaging with the pleasure of the food and that whole sort of eating very quickly, scooping it down while we're reading our emails or answering something that we've got to do for work. It can be a whole mindless activity that means that we're much more likely to overeat because we're not really engaging with the food. We're just almost putting petrol in a car, but not really putting any consideration into how that food is sitting, whether we're enjoying it, whether we're actually enjoying the taste. So it's really important to just slow down. We know that pleasure from food, that first bite, gives you the most pleasure. That's absolutely true. So when you have a treat next time, I'd really love for you to try eating that treat really mindfully, really enjoying it, and really notice when the pleasure starts to wane, because I reckon it'll be a few bites in and suddenly you'll just be eating something for the sake of it. And when it's a treat food, maybe that's the time to think, well, do I want the rest of this? Or perhaps I've had the most pleasurable experience that I'm going to get and I can have a treat another day because I'm not going to eat all of it. That might be far away from where you are, but I'd be really interested to know whether you try that out. You can let me know next week. I will be here. And then we're finally going to share this little hunger scale with you, which can be helpful in some circumstances. It's not helpful for everyone, and we're all different. So some people will love something like this, and some people just won't get along with it at all. With this hunger scale, it's from 1 through till 10. And as you can see, we're sort of suggesting that you don't wait till you're really, really hungry before you start eating, that you start eating when you notice sort of like a fair amount of appetite. So start before you're ravenous, start before you're really, really starving. So when you notice that hunger and it's sort of sitting there for quite a while, maybe use a clock and think to yourself, okay, well, I only ate 2 hours ago, so what's going on here? Is it that I ate something that's been absorbed really quickly? So next time I eat, I need to make sure I've got that protein and I've got that fiber. Really use this as a tool to also help you think, well, how quickly has that food gone through my system? Because really, if you're eating in a way where your energy is maintained and you're not starving hungry, somebody mentioned cravings in the chat, that they're really struggling with cravings. This is really relevant to you. You need to be thinking, okay, I'm hungry already. Something's going on here. Something I've eaten either doesn't agree with me, I haven't had enough protein, or I haven't had enough fiber. So start switching things around and see if you can get that hunger to last, a space without hunger for 4 to 5 hours, gradually broaden it out. So use this as a tool alongside the food and mood and sort of capturing that diary of how you're eating, what you're eating, how it's sitting in your body. We're all very different. There are certain foods for each of us that, for whatever reason, even if they're health foods, they don't always work for us. So this can really help. And then from the other side of the scale, to stop eating when you're feeling full and satisfied rather than waiting for that feeling absolutely full to the point of being uncomfortable. So, and then the next step on is just getting that to move the gaps so that you have longer gaps. Somebody's asked about fasting, so we can pick up on that in the Q&A. So we're going to do a final poll now, just to ask you what you might do differently over the next sort of few days or week. Really think about some of the things we've talked about today and what has resonated with you. Is there anything that you think would be important for you to do differently? Again, this is completely anonymous, so feel free to answer it or not as you choose. Hopefully you can see it. I can see people are beginning to answer, so thank you. Great. And we will quickly move on and show you where we're going to be over the next couple of weeks and what we're going to be doing with webinars. And we will then come to your questions. So let's have a look at this poll, Sam, while we're doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got barriers that are getting in your way. Okay. So we've got a lot of people saying, okay, weight regain in the past after dieting, worried about failing, and low motivation or low self-esteem. So that's been resonating with people. Okay, so what are you going to focus on differently after today's webinar? More aware of those saboteurs. Okay. Building positive
Great.
habits, fantastic. And mindful eating, great. Yes.
And it's
Positive
and
stress magnet. Oh, brilliant.
with all of those things, I would say we have to practice.
Yeah.
You can't suddenly decide, oh, I'm going to be a mindful eater when you have never been a mindful eater. It's sort of something that you need to put that conscious thinking to with every meal or with every snack or with every time you eat, use it as an opportunity to learn something about yourself, about your hunger, about the foods you've eaten, whether they're really working for you, whether you're eating because it's an emotional reason for eating, cravings, we'll pick that up straight away, I think. So for me, cravings are often something to do with what's going on emotionally rather than necessarily hunger. So we have a whole webinar, don't we, Sam, on cravings. So there would be a link, Julia, to share for a replay of that webinar that you could perhaps consider watching if that's relevant to you. Because what we know about cravings is that they're often because of something going on in our heads or in our emotions. And it is often when we crave something, we often crave a specific food. And if you're always craving that specific food rather than I'm really hungry and I don't care what I eat and I'm going to satisfy my hunger, it's a very different thing to actually a craving, which is often for the same food. So take a think next time you're getting that craving and think, okay, is this hunger? Am I feeling upset? Am I bored? Am I tired? What is it? What's the emotion behind the eating, if it is in fact an emotion? So have a think about that because that can be really enlightening and will work really closely with everything we've been talking about today, won't it, Sam?
Yeah, and I think it's important to, be a bit playful about this. I feel like we're giving you lots of tasks to do, but an interesting journey for you. I think it's that sort of self-exploration. It's a bit of an adventure if you've not thought about it, and it's discovering more about you, because this is your journey. It's very personal to you. It's going to be different than anyone else's. It's unique. And it's an opportunity when we reflect on things and our personal reasoning, or we get to know ourselves a bit better. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And we recognize strengths that we have that perhaps we took for granted or we didn't realize, we had. And we recognize our things that are there to support us, the qualities we have. So I really wish you um success in that, and just that it's an enjoyable journey as well, like not saying that sometimes it can be hard and sometimes it's difficult discovering exploring things, but it's also powerful and empowering for you to really learn to have that compassion and acceptance for the journey that you're on.
Yeah, very much. So I'm going to dive into a really long question that's here in the Q&A box. Obviously, the questions in the Q&A box are completely anonymized, so that helps if you prefer to be anonymized. So somebody has said that they're finding that there is a huge amount of conflicting information, especially for women who want to lose weight and also navigate losing weight around hormone imbalances, cortisol, whether there's a good time to exercise, whether there's a better time to exercise, whether we should walk, how we stabilize blood sugar. And it's all really confusing. And I totally agree. And I think that's one of the key reasons that we put these webinars on because we 100% hear you. You also mentioned that you are personally experiencing something called PCOS, which is polycystic ovary syndrome, for those who aren't aware of it. So, all that I know for somebody in your particular situation, being female, having PCOS, wanting to balance your hormones and lose weight, would be my advice would be follow something such as our core meal plan. It's really simple. It is not complicated. It covers all of the main foods. You choose a protein, you choose your vegetables, you choose your carbs. We've got sort of recommendations about how much to eat, but you want to balance your plate. Try and ignore all of the complicated messaging that there is out there because actually simplicity is key because otherwise we feel so overwhelmed, don't we? That actually that overwhelm means that we just don't know what to do and then we end up doing nothing because it's too complicated. So we're here to make this simple because it isn't simple, but the simple structure of your day can be simple. So follow that core meal plan. In terms of intermittent fasting, the best place for everyone to start is to start with a 12-hour eating window. So 12 hours. So start eating your breakfast at 7 in the morning, finish eating your dinner by 7 in the evening. It's simple. Try and have 3 meals. If you need a snack mid-afternoon, make sure it's sort of like got that balance alongside it. So you've got some protein, you've got a little bit of healthy fat. You really think about what it is that that snack's going to look like. So set yourself up, plan a few days at a time, maybe plan 3 days and repeat those a couple of times in a week. So it's really simple, less overwhelming. You want, with anything like a PCOS type of problem going on in your body, you want to balance your hormones. The best way to do that is to start by balancing your blood sugar and balancing your insulin, which is why the core meal plan or the key core GLP-1 meal plan can be really helpful for you. So I hope that helps. And then in terms of exercise, actually, after you've eaten, just doing a couple of squats or some press ups against the wall can help your glucose be taken up by your muscles a little bit more easily. That's as simple as it gets. And then the rest of it is okay, try and do some activity, but do it at a time that fits for you. Because otherwise, if you're always trying to make the perfect day, it makes it so hard. Anything you would say different to that, Sam? Sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, that's a great answer. I think in terms of exercise, I would say, always try and exercise after you've had something, I think it's less shocking for the body to eat when you've got some fuel on board. Make sure you're staying really well hydrated over the day. I would say with what you're trying to do in PCOS, the long term is to really look at your body composition. So you want to be building muscle tissue and reducing the fat stores as much as you can because we know the fat stores contribute to the symptoms of PCOS. So I would be looking at resistance training as when if that suits you, if you're at a stage where you can think about that. But maybe in the long term, you can think about that and how you would build in some resistance. So if you're going to go walking, maybe having something as simple as a weighted vest to add a bit of resistance to that walk. Or as Ruth said, you could just do body weight things, body weight squats, push-ups against a wall. You could put a couple of cans of baked beans in a backpack so you're evenly balanced and, go for a walk like that. You don't have to buy anything expensive. But yeah, best of luck. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, somebody's saying in the chat box that they sleep really badly and tried everything. We have a whole webinar on sleep, and we will run that sometime in the new year as well. But have a look at the replay if that helps. I was talking to someone I was working with recently, and they have had sleep problems for years, and they have now finally cut out caffeine after 12. And she cannot believe it because she actually is now sleeping, and that is after years of believing caffeine wasn't the issue. It often isn't that simple, but I think there are sometimes insidious things that make a big difference. So have a look and see what's going on, whether there's a relevant thing, something you can think about. Um, great. So next question, let's see.
There's something about someone who has been on weight loss injections. Um, okay, so it seems like they're on weight loss injections and they've hit a plateau. So losing weight well, consistently, one or 2 pounds a week, and then it feels like it's kind of slowed down or not really hovering, or kind of hovering. Remember, for all of us, whether we're on weight loss injections or not, weight loss is not a straight line for anybody. Okay, it doesn't just keep going down. There will be times where it's a bit stagnated, or depending on what we've eaten, what our tummy's doing that day, 1 pound here or there is neither here nor there. It's not very interesting. But I do understand that if you're on a weight loss journey and you've been going a certain way, and then suddenly things aren't going the way you think they have been, or they're not going the way that they have been, it's a little bit concerning. There is such a thing as set point theory, which we talk about in a different webinar, which is what we believe happens when the body it goes through a weight loss process. Remember, the body is a primitive um, amazing, amazing, amazing thing, but it still has the same stuff it did millennia ago. So it doesn't understand when we're losing weight deliberately like this, that we're doing this deliberately and that we are, the aim is to lose weight. So what the body aims for, generally in all systems, is homeostasis, which is everything staying the same. Okay, so it will compensate for things. For blood, it wants blood pressure to stay pretty consistent. It wants your energy levels to stay pretty consistent. Anyway, in terms of weight, if we are losing a lot of weight, so our body, say we weigh 100 kilos, our body kind of is happy going along at 100 kilos and wants to keep us at 100 kilos. If we start losing weight, especially if we start losing weight fast, and it doesn't sound like this person is losing weight fast, by the way, I'm just make that as an example, the body can get a bit alarmed, okay? And maybe if you've lost weight consistently over several months, your body's got to a point where it's like, hang on a minute, give me some time to just adjust to this new set point. So I was at set point 100 kilos, and now we're about 80. Hang on a minute, let me just readjust, recalibrate to that new weight. Okay, and that can take a bit of time. And I know you're going to say, how long? How long is a piece of string? It can take a few weeks, it can take over a month. But it's a real opportunity because it sounds like this person who has asked the question is doing fantastically. Can you keep doing the things you're doing even though the scale's not changing? And also remember, the scales are not the only thing we look at. All right. So scales can be helpful. Sometimes they can be distracting, but think about also how your clothes are fitting, how you feel in yourself. Have you got any joint pain? Are those aches and pains better than they were before? Look at those other signs that you are making progress. Okay. So don't panic. The body is readjusting. It will pick up again if you carry on the way you have been. If you're looking at, you sound like you haven't changed any of your foods or habits during that time. Don't panic, don't doubt yourself. You're doing all the right things. Your body is an incredible you're an incredible organism. It is just recalibrating to the to the new normal for you, which perhaps is 80 kilos. That's where you are, whatever it is for you. But so you can think of it as a bit of a sort of step there. So you've just a bit of a plateau, we call it, and then it will start dropping again. All right. If you just maintain, keep going, don't give up, you're already doing brilliantly. So
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of people are commenting about plateaus, so really goes along with what you're already saying, Sam. But I think one of the things that worth doing is just checking. This is where there is occasionally a role to just check in with a calorie counter, what your plate of food over the course of the day looks like. I often find people are either eating the same amount that they were eating before they went on a weight loss journey, they've lost a couple of stone, and actually now their caloric requirement is less, and so they haven't adjusted it down. So that can be a reason for plateau as well. That's not so common. Actually, what I often find is people aren't eating enough. And so when you're not eating enough, your body will almost go into starvation mode. And that means it will reserve and hold on to your stores because actually it's trying to keep you safe. Our bodies are still very primitive. So actually everything they do is based around what they did 100 or more years ago. They don't understand GLP-1 injections or, a need to eat in a certain way or fasting. They are just primitive. So we need to help them work effectively. So also just check you're eating enough. And because that's absolutely crucial. And somebody had put a comment in terms of that whole eating enough about hair loss. Is that an inevitable aspect of weight loss or of taking a medication? The research is the jury is out, I think, but actually, I think the key thing is that if you're undernourished, that is going to be the thing that might stimulate you to lose weight. So, this is why Sam and I are here, because one thing we want you not to do is be undernourished in this
Yeah,
journey.
yeah.
So,
That
that's
was to
absolutely,
lose hair. Sorry.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's a yeah. Sorry.
yeah.
Really, just yeah. Undernourishment is very common, and actually, we know that actually, if you are in an obese category, there is a ironically a danger of being undernourished in that state as well. So we always say if you're on a GLP-1 medication, at least take a multivitamin alongside and really look at how you are building your plate, having at least 2 meals a day. We do not want anyone to be starving or to not be nourishing their body.
Absolutely. Somebody's asking about recalibrating set point. Yes, we believe that if you can maintain, so actually, as you were saying just now, a weight loss journey isn't linear. You will often lose weight, plateau, lose weight, plateau, lose weight. Actually, what the research says is that can be really helpful because those plateaus help your set point, the weight that your body expects you to settle at to be recalibrated down. So you can recalibrate down. When you get to that maintenance point, it is about maintaining that weight for a year or longer and doing all of the other activities around making sure you're eating adequately, making sure that you're working on strong muscle mass or good quality muscle mass, that your body composition is following that curve with you, because that those are the things that can make the difference. So it's very complicated, but that's trying to simplify quite a complicated situation. Yeah,
Yeah. Mm-mm.
great. There's a few collagen supplements, very trendy, aren't they? Um, we have talked about collagen before. I don't think there is a reason not to take a collagen supplement unless you've got some pre-existing condition where you're advised not to, such as kidney disease. That may be contraindicated. We'd have to go and look, and that's where that becomes an individual question for you. So you need to know your health history, and if there are lots of medications or a lot of medical conditions, we would ask you to check with your medication provider if you're on a weight loss medication. For the general public, then there appears to be some slight benefits in collagen for skin, for other reasons as well. So muscle
You
health.
also get collagen in food. You don't need to buy expensive supplements. You get collagen if you especially if you eat animal protein.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's asking questions about timing of jabs. I think we probably,
There's a question about doing something. So I would not advise taking time. Follow your prescription advice. I wouldn't be taking time off. I we don't. I do not know anything about taking time off around the menstrual cycle. I have not heard anyone advise that. So I'm sorry, I can't advise that. I would take it as prescribed, please.
yeah, absolutely. And Peter, that's music to our ears, keeping the day slow, following the healthy eating and movement. Perfect. That's the way to do it. And that was absolutely perfect. So well done for being back and well done for making that your mindset. Somebody is saying they've put on £5 in one day, been tracking everything, but did have a takeaway on Saturday night. It's probably just an inflammatory response going on in your body. I would try very hard not to be derailed by that. It is unlikely to be true weight gain. It might be an inflammation weight gain where you've got maybe a little bit more fluid sort of in your cells at the moment as a result of something you ate differently, one meal is unlikely to have caused you to gain 5 pounds in weight. So please don't overthink. And also really focus on your energy, how foods are making you feel, all of those other aspects of food. Food is so much more, it tells us so much more than just about the food that we eat.
There's a question there about pushing yourself to eat to avoid undernourishment. I'm assuming that you are taking a injection. If you cannot eat at least 2 meals a day with the injection, I would be quite worried. Okay, I think you are being over medicated, and that is not the aim of the medication. So please be really alert to that. I know that when we have struggled with weight all our lives, it can feel so liberating to not think about food and to not be hungry and to be able to have a salad for lunch and not be starving all afternoon. But we really need to look at this is sometimes where calories can be useful in what we need to nourish our bodies and how we're building that plate because we should not be starving ourselves. It can be really, really not good for our system. It can put our bodies into a bit of panic as well and slow our metabolism down. This is again where we get a bit concerned about fast weight loss when we lose weight very quickly. I know it can feel, we can always get a quite high from it. So because we haven't lost weight like that in the past, and maybe we've struggled with weight for a long time. The danger of it is that then the metabolism slows down and then the muscles start to break down. Okay. And then we start losing that amazing muscle tissue that burns calories for us at rest. Our metabolism slows and it makes keeping the weight off much more difficult. Okay. So we're really looking at slow weight loss. We're looking at 1 to 2 pounds a week. We're not on average, we're not looking at much faster than that. Okay. Because we want to preserve our metabolism that's going to see us through for the long term. Because this is not a short term thing. We're not just losing weight for summer holidays or whatever it is. This is long term. This is for our health. This is for our well-being long term. We really want that for you and for it not to be an exercise in starvation. Really, really, really not. It's can really mess about with your metabolism.
Okay, we are at the end of time here, everyone. So thank you so much for your questions. We hope you have a lovely week. Really look after yourselves, be mindful, be kind to yourselves as much as you possibly can. Thank you for your time. Somebody asked if you could come even if you're not on a weight loss medication. Yes, absolutely.
Of course,
Not need
all are welcome.
medication to be here.
You don't need weight loss medication to lose weight as well. Let's remember, we've been losing weight for millennia without any injections. I know that a lot of people are really grateful for the injections, not dissing them in any way, but you don't have to. What we are telling you, what we are teaching you is advice for anybody who wants to lose weight in a healthy and sustainable way, jabs or
Absolutely.
no jabs.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you next week. Just take care, everyone. And thanks, Julia, for being here and sharing all the links and help. And thanks to Sam for your amazingness. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Ruth. Bye,
Bye.
guys.